Well, good morning, everyone. I am opening the June business meeting of the VOREC Steering Committee. Um, there are, do you all have access to your video and mics? There's been a couple of changes in Teams, and I want to make sure that I set the meeting up properly. Great. Seeing that people are turning their videos on and sound awesome. All right, so I'm Jackie Dagger, and I'm the program manager for the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative. And today we're going to use our round robin format, which we've used in the past, to share updates with each other. Before we dive in, I just wanted to take a moment to do some housekeeping updates for you guys. And just recognizing that a lot has happened since the last time we met in April, and I want to keep you guys updated on what's happening from the program side. And the biggest update I have is about the wrap up of this year's legislative session. So, as you know, the legislature was considering funding for another round of the VOREC Community Grants Program. And the budget is, I believe it still hasn't been signed by the governor, but it is looking like the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation is going to get $200,000 more for another round of the grants program, which is really exciting. And we're already thinking about the next round of the program and how to fill gaps, how we align that funding with Move Forward Together Vermont. And as we start to shape ideas, our plan is to reach out to you, share opportunities to get involved so you can keep your eyes out for that. I also wanted to set your expectations a little bit because we're going from 2 rounds of $5 million for this grant program down to $200,000. And it's actually a level of funding that we had for the program pre-pandemic. So we've had $200,000 in the past. During that round, we granted to around 5 communities as opposed to the 51 projects that we were able to fund in the last round. So just be keeping that in mind as we move forward with this next round of the program. We know there's a lot of interest and a lot of people excited about this funding, so we're really going to be thinking about how do we make the biggest impact with the funding that we have, knowing that the landscape is quite different for outdoor recreation economy than it was pre-pandemic. Any questions about that as we move forward? Great, not seeing any. So the second quick update I wanted to share, I just wanted to confirm that our second in-person meeting for the year has been scheduled. We'll be meeting on Monday, October 5th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. is the hold. You should have all received that calendar hold for me, and if you didn't, please let me know, and I'll make sure you get that information on your calendars. We don't have a location or the agenda yet, but I'll make sure to keep you guys in the loop as those things start to come together. Heather, I wanted to turn to you and ask, are there any other quick housekeeping things that I missed? Or Claire, Becca actually, I believe isn't going to be able to join us this morning. She had a dental appointment yesterday and wasn't sure how she'd be doing this morning. So Claire is filling in on behalf of FPR.
Well, number one, I guess I just wanted to congratulate you for getting the 200K through the budget. I know it's not as much as in the past, but I just want to make sure that that's recognized, that that's actually great to see that investment was recognized, how important it is. And agreed that I don't think the budget has actually gotten to the governor yet. So wait a little bit longer on that. I don't think any other housekeeping that I can think of, but thank you, Jackie.
Great. Claire, anything you can think of that I'm missing? Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to turn the floor over to you guys, and I prompted you ahead of this meeting to think about the conferences, convenings, and other events that you've attended since January. and come prepared to share your takeaways and why it matters for our work. I wanted to give you this space because I know how much we learn at these events, and it's not often that we get to share those thoughts and ideas with each other. So, as we continue our work on the VOREC action plan and consider ongoing needs for investment in Vermont's outdoor recreation economy, I really wanted to give you the chance to share some of these thoughts with each other and with Heather, Becca, and myself as well. So if you haven't been to any events or convening since the beginning of the year, that's okay too. It's totally fine to share updates from your work or anything significant that you have coming up for your community that you'd like to share with the steering committee. So just wanted you to know that's okay. When you're ready to share, please go ahead and raise your hand or come off mute. And also consider the time that you're taking. My goal is to get to everybody in the next hour, and I'm estimating each person will have about 2 to 3 minutes to share. We sometimes get into conversation about the ideas that people are bringing up, so that's okay, but try and keep yourself to 2 to 3 minutes when you share. Yeah, and then as a reminder, we're talking about your takeaways, why it matters for our work, and or any updates that you want to share with the steering committee. All right, I'll turn it over to you and look for any raised hands. I know you guys have ideas to share.
I'll happily go first.
All right, go ahead, Nick.
Okay. So I was just recently at the Ski Vermont conference last week in Jay. I know a number of other people were there. One of I guess my takeaway from both that and then I guess some other meetings and just being in the ski industry for quite a while is the need for really competent and good staff and the training of that staff. And I thought that Tiffany Whitcomb from the Pipeline Project had a really compelling talk. The Pipeline Project is something that she has founded, which is a opportunity, I guess you would say, to connect high school age, middle school age students with potential careers in the ski industry. It's kind of a gap that she's identified as being filled, which I totally agree. I mean, from my perspective, working in the ski industry, I've been really fortunate in getting some incredible employees, but I think most of all of that's been due to luck and not from somebody following a career, a designated career pathway. I think, as she correctly pointed out, a lot of careers in the ski industry are sort of viewed as being ski bums who want an opportunity to work and ski. And I think that, if we are as an industry to survive, we need to move past that. And, I think the ski industry is clearly incredibly important component of the recreation industry as a whole in Vermont, as well as a lot of the country in Northeast. And so I think, legitimizing those careers is really important. There's a lot of other things going on in Vermont. UVM just has a fairly new snow sports degree program, and the state university system has some degree programs as well, which I think is really important to our success overall within the outdoor rec sector as well as the ski industry. That might not even be 2 minutes, but that's what I've got to share.
That's great. Thanks, Nick. All right, Carrie.
Here to everything you said, Nick. I think that professionalizing the outdoor recreation realm is completely essential to making everything we're doing more effective. I wanted to just kind of mention it was actually the accessibility hub kind of final VOREC grant recipient gathering where we we all got together and reflected on the 18 months that we've been working together previously. And, one of the things that came out of that was that we're not done yet. We have so much work yet to do. And the collaboration and the partnerships and the knowledge and the trust that we built among ourselves was so valuable. And we are excited to keep doing that and figuring out how that's going to work. Is going to be awesome. Another, not necessarily out of that meeting, but, as a result of that, our crew is at Indian River this week implementing on the recommendations that came out of the assessments we did as a result of that project. So, the idea of creating resources and doing assessments and turning that into action is coming full circle, which is really satisfying. And then another kind of piece related to that whole project and why I feel so compelled to keep it going. I was at a meeting in Maine on Monday, and it came up, the idea of accessibility came up there, and people in Maine were asking, saying, how does my trail crew learn how to address accessibility in this manner? And for better or for worse, I said, hey, Vermont has this really incredible website that we put together. It has resources for trail builders. So Vermont, let's get our act together, because once Maine gets this information, they're going to run with it and we're going to have to compete. So that was sort of in a nutshell what I have to say.
Awesome. I'll go to Abby.
Thanks, Jackie. Hi, everyone. I have a few, but they will be brief, Jackie, don't worry. Personal announcement, I'm no longer interim executive director. I am the real deal now. So that was announced this week, and I'm like really thrilled to officially be in the role with the Northeast Kingdom Collaborative. The gathering I want to share about happened 2 weekends ago at Traps in Stowe. It was the 4th annual Women and Gender Expansive Mountain Bike Festival. It was founded at KT a couple of years ago. It moved over to Traps last year. And even though I'm not at KT anymore, I still got to lead and be involved with organizing the event. And it's just really powerful. Over 200 participants, adaptive athletes, and they're coming from all over, even beyond New England. And so it's just a wonderful opportunity to highlight the outdoor rec options in Vermont. And then my last thing, on Monday, I was over in Colebrook, New Hampshire, with a little initiative being led by the Northern Forest Center, where New Hampshire is kind of taking a look at their BEA outdoor rec numbers, and when it comes to mountain biking or any biking, it's really low. Like, they could do so much more, and they're looking to Vermont as a case study. So I was over there to just share about experiences with Kingdom Trails, but also mapping gravel roads, because we have NEK gravel. So just like a really nice sharing of similar regions, even though they're different states. And when I was there, I found out, Heather, get ready for this one. And they just announced it today, and I can't take it, I was not involved at all. This is Northern Forest Center. But the Memphremagog Greenway, they just opened it up today, and you can now ride completely encompass Lake Memphremagog. So you're crossing into Canada and coming back down, and I can't wait to do it. So I know, Heather, you've been working really hard on those cross-border relations, so this is a win for sure. So thanks.
Hugely exciting. Rick from Newport shared that it was coming, so yay.
Right, and Claire just dropped in the chat that that project was supported by the last round of the VOREC Community Grants Program as well. Great. I'm going to go over to Eva.
Hey guys, so lots going on here. So I'm going to try to be brief as well. I mean, things are just booming and bustling for the rail trail, and it's the 10th anniversary of the first 17-mile stretch that opened up in Memorial County, our 10-year anniversary as well in business. But I will bring my focus to our the town of Johnson received the Recreation Economy for Rural Communities Planning Assistance Program from the EPA, along with, I believe, Newport. And so I've been working on the state steering committee in my town with that. It's very exciting. We've had our first 2 sessions meeting, working on our community self-assessment, preparing for our follow-up meeting with the EPA team at June 25th. And we're making a lot of progress. We are definitely, it's been hard for our committee to come together on what we agree on for our topics of, our topic areas to focus on. But we're making some headway, and there is a big event in August 27th and 28th. Everyone is invited to attend. We're working on figuring out who the recruiting participants and stakeholders for this meeting. I believe that we've got Jackie Casino coming for the rail trail representative. We're trying to get our local senators and representatives to attend this, as well as our community members. But the takeaway is that there is the town of Johnson has experienced ongoing heavy duty flooding for many years, long before our big floods of 2023. And we've got some pretty heavy duty projects, and funding is going to be something, we like I said, are making a lot of headway on our topic areas and what we think we're going to need to focus on. And we're excited to be meeting with this EPA team to, bring this all together and come up with a plan. But funding is definitely going to be, there's only so much we're going to be able to do in the planning zone if we aren't able to acquire the funding that is necessary for some of these giant projects that are really necessary to prevent our town from going economically underwater if we are literally underwater again. And so anyway, that's been very exciting. I will keep you guys updated on our progress with that. And Jackie, I'm not sure if that was, you were brought up. I was asked if you would be attending in August. And I said I would ask today and confirm if so. No pressure, but we'd love to have you there. And like I said, there's so much more I can go into, but I'm going to stop now because it'll take all day.
Yeah. I'll follow up quickly on that question. I have let the organizers know that I'm unable to join for that meeting, but Claire is, so there will be representation at that meeting. Thanks, Eva. All right, Jeff.
All right, the Philadelphia is going to come out in me, and I'm going to hustle through this real fast and talk fast, so you guys get ready for this. We presented at the Move United Education Conference in Cape Cod about the Trail Accessibility Hub, about our economic impact analysis. It was a huge hit with a lot of other adaptive programs around the country, especially some of the fledgling organizations that are still trying to get a foothold in their state. So a lot of that information really went down the road pretty far for folks. That was a VOREC funded grant. I took the same presentation and went to the Walk Bike Summit in Bennington, which was an amazing presentation. So I think that could be another conference that maybe VOREC is at as well, just to hype what is going on accessibility wise and in general with VOREC around the state. Then we followed that up with the National Outdoor Recreation Conference, where we presented a full day workshop on the front end of the conference on accessibility, belonging, adaptive bike demo, and a few other things, which resonated quite well. A lot of states have been emailing us for the deck, for information about the Trail Accessibility Hub. Once again, Carrie, just like Maine, they're all going to get this information and run with it. And then some folks that run the International Trail Summit actually asked if we could potentially do the same workshop at the International Trail Summit in Durham, North Carolina next year. So that was kind of cool. This all comes back to us going out of state, using our money to hype the state. And if we can get some funding from the state in some way, shape, or form, even for the maple syrup that we bought to give away in our presentation, that would be awesome. The Trail Accessibility Hub is still rocking. We have 8 assessments on the schedule this summer. We've already done 4 of them. The U.S. Forest Service came with us last week to the Blueberry Lake assessment, which was cool to have U.S. Forest Service people on the ground with us at the assessment. We're doing everything from Windham County all the way up to Cricket Hill, all the way up to St. Johnsbury. So we're covering a lot of ground with those. And then we've got out-of-state organizations, the state of Connecticut. We've had a meeting with them about assessments for their trail systems, and also the Friends of Blue Hills out of Boston, Mass. And that even raised a question of the group of like, wait a minute, we can get paid to do this out of state, but we're doing it in state and we're not getting paid to do it in state. So that was just a question that was raised through the group. And then we're at one more conference coming up in November, a Travel Ability Conference down in Tampa Bay. It's an accessible travel conference that's pretty awesome. And we're going to go down there and hype the hell out of Vermont. So that's all I got.
It's a lot, Jeff. I know you've been traveling quite a bit. Great. Arwen, go ahead.
I always hate going after Jeff. No, I'm just kidding, Jeff. So not so many convenings or meetings on a large scale, but it's just been increasingly obvious that outdoor recreation is being considered as part of community infrastructure across Vermont, which has been a very, very welcome change, at least in my 7 years here. And what I'm seeing in the Rutland area and beyond is things like the Vermont Department of Health and the Green Mountain Trail Associations reaching out to us to partner with them on something they're hosting rather than the other way around. Other things like our gear library that was funded by the VOREC grant is a huge, huge success. So successful that the Rutland Free Library here is funding it for 5 years. And anyone who has a membership to the library is able to rent things for free. We haven't even hard launched it. Like we've soft launched it, but we're keeping it a little slow as we figure out the ins and outs of gear libraries. And we can't keep certain things on the shelves. So it's really exciting to see that we're getting a lot of donations of things like brand new e-bikes. And the number one users of our gear library are actually other organizations who have free memberships. If any nonprofit wants to use it, they just assume liability if things don't come back. No one seems to have issues with that. And so they're actually checking out things, organizations that aren't related to outdoor recreation at all, but more related to health equity and equity overall, to introduce their program participants to outdoor recreation in very low barrier ways. So that's been really exciting for us to see that shift where as an organization, we're not the ones that are having to like lead everything. Now we're getting invited to other people's parties. And then for the first time, we were approved to speak at the Health Equity Summit at UVM. We apply every single year from an outdoor recreation equity lens, and every single year we're not relevant, but this year apparently we are. And we will be sharing our equity findings on outdoors that was part of our VOREC grant. So we're really, really excited about that. And then out of state, we've been invited to go to Salem, Massachusetts Green Expo at the end of this month to share some of our outdoor equity work that we're doing here in Vermont. So I just think from a holistic point of view, things feel like they're changing all around us. And it's a nice positive thing where maybe things don't always feel positive in this day and time.
Wow, that felt like a massive update. Arwen, I'm very excited to hear that you guys will be at the Health Equity Summit. And glad that that's changed this year. Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, Arwen, you said it was hard to go after Jeff, but I don't know about going after you either. That was awesome. Congratulations on all that. That was really exciting news. I wanted to follow up on some of the stuff that Eva said about, being ready for funding right now. Jackie and I, along with Jeff, attended the National Outdoor Recreation Conference in Duluth. And some of the sessions I went to were about how other states are funding their outdoor recreation grants. And as Jackie mentioned, we did these really great VOREC grants, so many of which have been alluded to or mentioned in all of your updates. And we relied on the pandemic funding, and it's very clear that we don't have that level of funding anymore. So it's interesting to hear how other states are funding in a little bit more sustainable ways. And I think that it's really important for Vermont to consider those other ways of funding things. Montana is funding through rooms and meals taxes, a really cool program to support communities that don't have tourism economies or are have nascent tourism economies, to try and actually spread visitors, because they have some destination management issues in that state. And they're funding sustainably through a number of years. Colorado is doing a mini RERC like Johnson is getting from the federal government. They're doing a statewide one through their universities. Minnesota has funding through, a statewide vote. I don't know how it's a different mechanism for how they do things in Minnesota that has a sustainable funding. And I think that lately our legislature has been very reluctant to do any special funds, especially because of our challenges with funding education. And that's understandable, but I think seeing that there are creative solutions elsewhere was inspiring to think about what could work for Vermont, because I really think sustainable funding will do a lot more than these one-off funding. So it was really interesting. I don't think all of those, or maybe any of those, how they are done right now, are possible in Vermont, but I think that there are some ideas that we can take and tweak and change and maybe work towards getting sustainable support for communities to just be that basis that then launches these other initiatives that aren't state funded.
Yeah. Shelby, go ahead.
Claire, definitely been watching some activity in other states, and think you're right on the money with, literally, figuratively, with somewhere that Vermont's outdoor recreation investments need to go, and I'd love to continue brainstorming there. I'm very inspired by what everyone's reported out with here so far, and thank you, Jackie, for designing this round robin prompt. I was going to report out about a annual sort of a fly-in to Washington, D.C., hike the hill kind of event that my organization, the Trust for Public Land, hosts every year. That took place in April, mid-April this year. It's pretty much, it's a spring activity. And I typically travel with community-based partners and advisory board members of the organization down there and take meetings with members of the delegations that we're doing work in. So kind of in meeting with DC staff rather than in district, in state staff who we might also be maintaining relationships with. And this year I attended the Vermont meetings with a man by the name of Paul Silo. He is a partner of ours with the Northern Rivers Land Trust, who we've been working with in partnership on community forest, town forest acquisitions in Wolcott, and more recently Buffalo Mountain community forest in Hardwick. And so we got to talk a little bit with delegation staff and members about the power of the federal community forest grant program and the changes making in communities. And one follow-on from that is hopefully an opportunity to host a visit with Senator Welch at the Wolcott Community Forest later this September, or early September. And that intersects with a lot of points of interest to folks on this steering committee and the FPR staff. There was a VOREC grant that immediately activated the trails at Wolcott. There's been other federal investments with wastewater infrastructure and village preservation trust activities in Wolcott and along the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. This took place like about a month and a half, but this visit to DC took place about a month and a half before a town revote that was being held in Hardwick around the town's investment of $25,000 in the town forest establishment at Buffalo Mountain. And so the town, I'm going to connect some dots here, but the town had successfully voted at town meeting with support to kick in a capital commitment to the town forest acquisitions, about 400 acres, right? For those of you who know the area, sort of accessible from the Atkins Field, right near the village center of Hardwick. And Buffalo is also the namesake of like the grocery store in town, and it's a topographical feature in the backdrop of the village. And so the town meeting went well. There was a petition of opposition circulated that caused a need to host a revote on the town forest investment decision. And I did want to share that revote actually went incredibly well and had a even more positive turnout than the initial town meeting. And if you'll indulge me for 1 second, I'm going to show you all a photo of the town hall vote. And this, as an aside, was a vote that was being conducted about a week after repeal of certain elements of Act 181, not sort of materially connected to this issue of public land acquisition, but certainly, you know, sort of adjacent to issues around conservation and public understanding of that. And so I think between the visit to DC and the work in Buffalo Mountain, although our congressional delegation is a single party, we heard from a number of Republican leaders at the Trust for Public Land events from other states and delegation members just around really the bipartisan support for public lands and conservation related investments around the Land and Water Conservation Program. And then we kind of saw a broad base of support in Hardwick around this kind of local opportunity. And so there was a through line for me on that this spring. And hopefully if Senator Welch does make it out there, I'll make sure that you are all included on an invite to that site visit, which will probably be short and sweet, but it would be great to see some of you there.
Wow, that's great, Shelby. I love seeing that photo. I'm just curious, with the petition of opposition, was there like a main point in that petition that was put forward?
Yeah, there were actually two issues on the revote. There was a concern that non-residents had voted on the matter of expending town funds to help in the acquisition funding. And related, there was a second matter on the ballot about how the town would be cataloging votes through color cards or Australian ballot. I was not, my team wasn't as focused on following that issue, but I think it was sort of like voter integrity was sort of the specific concern. And, with community forest projects across the board, I think one of the power and the durability of them is like how involved residents as decision makers in a very intimate form of public land can be on the front end of these kind of decisions. And so that was definitely evident. So I think from our standpoint, although it was kind of nerve-wracking to have that question reconsidered as we were advancing the project, like it's really healthy process. And so I'm easier to say when we're still on track with it after the fact, but yeah, that was the issue, Jackie.
Thank you. All right, we haven't heard from a couple of people. Justin or Heather, do you have updates or ideas to share?
I've got a baby here who's just started getting fussy, so I apologize about that. But I don't really have any updates. Sorry, haven't been to any meetings or anything. Yeah, I guess I just don't have any updates in the world of outdoor recreation.
No worries, Justin. Thank you for chiming in. Heather?
I was laughing to myself as how that instinctual cry and that sense of emotion, like how often do we feel that and wish that we could express things that way? Sorry. It's just such a raw, genuine emotion. Anyway, I think that what strikes me, and I really get a lot out of hearing from everybody around the state, in so many different projects. It's really inspiring, as others said. I've talked quite a bit about this destination management plan that we've put together, and as we've been sort of bringing that around the state, we talked about it at the Ski Vermont annual meeting. We talked about it at the annual tourism summit, and we've done, some smaller sessions. But I think one of the things that's happened recently that's most encouraging about that is that the designated downtown program through the state is something, people know you get to be a designated downtown, and there is a small bit of money that comes with that. It's the Downtown Vibrancy Fund. And each year they choose how they're going to focus that particular funding. And this year they've decided to encourage all the towns to figure out some part of the destination management plan that they can adopt or otherwise think about how their activities align with that, which has just been really exciting to see, because we always hoped that the plan would be something that others could see themselves in. Yes, obviously it guides our work, but there's so much that we don't touch directly. So that's just been a really encouraging turn of events as we try to figure out what does implementation look like, again, on something that's so big and is many years out. So it'll be interesting to see. I'll be very interested to see what types of projects the downtown organizations identify for themselves, both in scope and what are the different topic areas, what they can learn from each other. I just think it's going to be really interesting. So it also just sort of gives me hope that, maybe even within this group or within outdoor rec, like, what does that look like in terms of, it's not necessarily, hey, do this thing now because we wrote this plan. It's more, what are your priorities? What are your projects? What are you already doing? And is there a way that we can at least understand and know what folks are doing and see how they stitch together, just for the benefit of all, to realize what kind of collective impact is actually happening or not, is kind of what's on my mind. So love hearing what everyone's up to.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. And I'll say I've seen your presentation a couple of times on the destination management plan, and I really appreciate that you've made sure to mention Move Forward Together Vermont and that connection and the Vermont Core Toolkit. And so just for folks who maybe haven't heard that presentation yet, I don't know if everyone has, but there are those connections to the work that we do in the destination management plan as well, and our sort of driving vision through Move Forward Together Vermont. So it's really exciting. Kelly, I think you haven't gone yet. Do you want to chime in?
Yes, I didn't know if it was just for the steering committee members, but I would love to chime in because we've had a couple events even in recent days that would be really interesting for the steering committee to hear about. I'll start with our Wednesday outdoor economy event in Southern Vermont. Jackie was there, and it was a really wonderful collaboration of a number of statewide and Jackie were there too as well, statewide and regional partners to bring together the business community from all of Southern Vermont, but in Brattleboro at the Retreat Farm, as well as many outdoor recreation organizations and municipalities to talk about that collaboration and the potential for better connection moving forward to support projects on the ground, as well as driving those local economies. We had close to 60 people, and people appreciated getting together in person, having some outdoor time, having unstructured conversations with a light agenda so they could learn from others. And I really feel like we walked away with so many good ideas. One business owner in Brattleboro said he knew about 20 of the 60 people. So it was a real reflection of the group that came together, which was really unique and was very energizing to those. A few stories from the panel. The business owner, Peter Fish Case from Borough Sports, talked a lot about the value proposition of a local business. It's a place that the internet can't offer that local community perspective, the knowledge, the relationships, and the connection to places. He also talked about the outdoor economy is more about an identity, and that it creates an experience that feels best when you're here. It's about building community and culture around movement, recreation, connection, and adventure. And I think people were very aligned on that vision and were very energized to do more. Another business owner, Emma Spett from River and Rye in Jamaica, told a story which I think is reflective of all the work that we do, that when you invest in the recreation infrastructure in a place, it attracts businesses and new entrepreneurs that then provide those amenities. And then you just see this domino effect of young people and outdoor and active people coming to recreate, people coming to work in that community, people coming to move to that community because it's really revitalized around outdoor recreation as a driver. So that was pretty exciting. Just wanted to mention the other event, which was part of the Climate Outdoor Workforce Initiative, of which VOREC is one of the partners. We held our employee recruitment, retention, and resilience training. It was mostly a presentation, of which I can put the recording in the chat, but it really brought together a first module of how we can support our businesses and organizations in not only meeting the needs they have for hiring and training, but also to build resilience into their employees. And the themes around personal resilience leading to business resilience, leading to community and landscape resilience was one of the driving tenets of the workshop. We also went through the social determinants of health, which we were interpreted to be social determinants of work, and then a quality jobs toolkit, which laid out all of these best practices and some storytelling from the outdoor sector, as well as climate research that we've gathered over the last 4 to 6 months and how that applies. So some of the discussion as part of that, once the presentation was over, from some of the businesses really brought up some of the challenges around seasonality and pay plus benefits, and how we can better as a sector really support our retail shops that go from 30 staff in the winter to 2 and 3 in the shoulder seasons to really being viable and supporting their employees, as well as understanding the quality or the cost of living in Vermont is high. So how can we provide benefits and other types of really rewarding professional development opportunities for our employees so we can attract people to our companies and to our jobs and to our communities. So I know that was long. I'll only finish by saying our next networking event is in partnership with VOREC, thanks to our work together. August 19th, we're having a networking and fun day at the Burlington Surf Club. I hope you can come from 3 to 6 to paddleboard, to play beach volleyball, to network, and have a light agenda around the topic of wellness. I love what you said, Arwen, about the gear library. There's a lot of workplace wellness opportunities to feed into some of our health work together as a state. And excited to have you join us on August 19th for some outdoor time.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. And I'll say, if you haven't been to the VOBA website in a while, there is a lot of really cool information, new information on there that's coming out of this Climate Outdoor Workforce Initiative that VOBA and Kelly are leading. And Kelly, I don't know, it might also be great to drop the link to the landscape analysis in the chat. That document has really looked at careers in the outdoor workforce and how they're facing changes because of increased weather events. And it's really interesting to read through that document. I think you all will be interested in those findings and find. I'm thinking back to Nick, what you were saying about career pathways and how do we support careers in the industry and validate them, but also build resilience in the people who work in those positions. So, so take a look at that. Let's see. We have about 12 minutes left. I have my own reflections to share, and then I think it might be interesting for us to talk about any themes that you heard in these updates, because again, we're thinking about the VOREC action plan and the continuing need for investment. And I'm really curious what you guys are taking away from the thoughts and ideas that were shared. But first, I'll just share with you that I was able to attend the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable Public Health and Outdoor Recreation Executive Forum. This took place in Washington, D.C. back in early May. And it brought together a lot of high-level folks from across the country to think about, where is the intersection between public health and outdoor recreation. And you probably know Outdoor Recreation Roundtable has elevated public health and outdoor recreation this year. They're calling it America's Outdoors Era. They have a whole website that articulates some of these pillars that they've identified and how we can start leaning in on those connections. But my biggest takeaway from that conversation was really around how we start to speak a common language. One of the ideas that was shared was that we have to start talking about outdoor recreation as nature reducing the cost of care. And articulating the different ways that outdoor recreation contributes to the reduction of those costs. And so as we move forward with the VOREC action plan, I'm starting to think about with Heather and Becca and our initiative on strengthening the connections between public health stakeholders and outdoor recreation stakeholders, how we start to dive in on that a little bit. How do we identify the pieces that already exist in the medical system or the public health system within the state of Vermont, and start to think about how we reach those partners and how we speak a common language, where there are opportunities to dive in on outdoor recreation as a strategy for reducing the cost of care and just general benefits to our local communities overall. So I wanted to share that with you. And then my other takeaway, I was at the tourism conference, which the Vermont Tourism Conference, which Heather is very familiar with and talked about the destination management plan a little bit. But I also wanted to share a takeaway from one of the workshops at that conference. And Heather, you will probably be able to fill in on this, but I was really struck by the percent of visitors to our state coming for the first time who say that they come for outdoor recreation. That statistic was 54%, and correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, I'm looking to you, but 54% of people coming to Vermont for the first time say that they're coming because of outdoor recreation, which is, I think, pretty big. Heather, anything
I'd have to look
wrong?
up the only thing that trips me up is the first time. I'd have to cross-reference that. But what I can say is, and I can provide the link to the study, that we do now have the full results from this year-long study we did of visitors, and that percentage that come for outdoor recreation, and what that changes by season, how that changes, first time or others. Point taken. It's huge. It's over the majority. So, but I'll look it up maybe if we have a chance right now.
Great. All right, so I'll come back to that prompt that I shared, just thinking back on the updates that you all have been sharing with each other over the last 45 minutes or so. Are there themes that have stood out to you, common things that we should be thinking about as we move forward with the VOREC action plan, or this, our continuing conversation about the need for investment in outdoor recreation economy in our state? What strikes you? Jeff.
it kind of hit me yesterday when I think it was yesterday when we were at the VOBA event down in Brattleboro. Brattleboro is an amazing space, and they have a lot to offer. And so, when the gentleman mentioned that they're 139 miles from the Kingdom Trails, and the Kingdom Trails supports their region through the recreational assets, I kind of had this moment of, okay, we're hyping the state to ourselves on a constant basis of like, we have all this rec, we're doing all this amazing stuff. So how do we get that? And I know, Heather, you have your entire plan built out, but how do we get that to almost, does VOREC start helping VDTM in a sense with some funding? This is weird, but like, and I know we're all fighting for trails and money, but like VDTM needs money too to hype everything we're doing. So, is there some kind of bucket that we could, go more of a granular level from each region instead of the beautiful photos that the VDTM is pushing out? And it's Brattleboro hyping themselves to mass and to that Connecticut zone. And it's, I don't know, just thinking outside the box there.
Thanks, Jeff. Shelby.
I have to pile on with what Jeff said, and then offer my observation on a trend or theme. So I did want to give a shout out to VOREC and probably ACCD for the support of Best Day Ever as a film, which has been tearing up the film festival network nationally and even internationally, and has been circulating here. So that tells the story of the driving range and Richmond Mountain Trails and Vermont Adaptive and other change makers, and is in many ways tells an incredible story about Vermont to other people. And so in keeping with Jeff, your suggestion, I think that that's been one lovely development over the spring. I know that the filmmakers have been on the road a lot, and that the success of that film and that Vermont story to and that approach to a values-based outdoor access that's, I think, a strong kind of brand statement for the state has been a real win this spring. So the theme I was gonna remark on, Jackie, to your question, is just how many how many like threads come together in a sector like outdoor recreation, be it health or economy, social cohesion. Like there's a lot of different interfaces that this group represents, conservation. And I think that can be it can be almost a challenge, and it's the fundamental asset of like how to figure out like an action plan. And I think on the health like benefits quantification work, I think that's like I know that's been something that a number of groups have felt like it's like a brass ring that's been really, really like hard to like distill and isolate impacts and measure them. But I think as there becomes an increasing amount of like legitimacy and knowledge and documentation of benefits, that I think we'll get there eventually. But that this like cross sector and intersectional kind of like nature of this work, I just wanted to acknowledge how sometimes it's a cause for like a challenge, and it's the fundamental asset. So.
Thanks, Shelby. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I would just say the idea that we really need to professionalize our industry, it seems to be a bit of a theme running through all of this. And alongside that the recent statistic that came out that Vermont is 51st in economic momentum, and 54% of visitors are coming to Vermont for the first time for outdoor recreation, or whatever that number happens to be. Outdoor recreation is what Vermont has, in terms of generating economic momentum, and all of us are part of that story. And I think that we have to figure out how to, turn that into real impact. And, I applaud Heather every day for everything she tries to get done with the tiny little budget that she has, because I know other states have a lot more money and they have great results. And I really would like to see, on that same note of what everybody's been saying, let's market to people outside of Vermont to get people to come to Vermont, not just to recreate, to discover this place, to contribute to our economy, to become residents, become business owners, etc. And we still have to work on the foundation. So yeah, what Shelby said, it's really hard. It's all a combination of everything, and it's challenging. But we have to professionalize, and we have to use that asset in order to have a thriving economy in this state.
Yeah, I will just confirm for everybody, it's 54% of visitors come for outdoor recreation, not necessarily just first-time visitors. So
Great.
But still, I mean, that takes into account even people who are coming to visit family and friends, or, who are coming back. But, and I can, that final survey isn't posted yet, but I can share that another time. Just to wrap that up wrap up one of my thoughts hearing this is just, Claire mentioned funding. I love, Jeff and Shelby, what you guys are talking about. Like, there's other ways to promote Vermont with other projects that are showing that, national, showing folks on the national stage. I love what you're saying about like values driven. I mean, I just think it's a really interesting conversation, both about how do we fund the projects that create these experiences, but then how do we tell that story behind them that isn't maybe just direct, destination marketing. There's just the whole idea that's all connected is kind of inspiring. So I love that Best Day Ever is doing so great. And I love that we were able to use federal money to do that.
Yes.
To help support that, even though they don't really quite realize it, but that's okay.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you guys for the conversation this morning.
This call is being recorded.
Not a lot of people digging in over there.
Right.
All 100% accurate that we have shared.
Well, thank you guys for the conversation this morning. It's been a real treat to hear your takeaways from the events you've been to. And yeah, our next meeting will be in, June, July, August. And it'll be a virtual meeting, but then we'll have our in-person meeting on Monday, October 5th. And again, if you didn't get that calendar hold from me, please let me know. I want to make sure that you have it on your radar. All right, with that, I'm going to wrap us up, and I hope you all enjoy the weekend and stay cool over the hot weather.
Thanks,
Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. See you soon.
Thank you, Jackie.